Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm here at the SCOOPstudio at SMTAi in Chicago, and I'm joined by three gentlemen to discuss standards. So I spend quite a lot of time with contract manufacturers and OEMs, and standards is something that's troubling them at the moment. They're really looking to get some results on this. I'm going to open with you, Mark. We've got basically three standards covered here. We've got Hermes, Mark Ogden from ASM. We've got Zach Elliott from Mentor on behalf of OML, and Jason Spira from Aegis, who's on the committee for CFX. We'll start a little bit by saying, where do you think the standard sits in the ecosystem, and where is it in terms of development to get it out to the market? Because people are getting impatient.
Right, well, it's a good question, Phil. In fact, we've had quite a bit of internal discussion about where we see this fitting. From an ASM perspective, we see Hermes as a standard that will allow smooth transportation of product along the production line. So you basically have machine-to-machine communication, which traditionally has been done by SMTAi. And that's a very simple handshake. It's like, I finish with this board, and I need the next board, right? Very simple communication. There's quite a lot of redundancy today in equipment where we're looking at bad mark inspection, maybe looking at barcode labels and things like that. It's done in every machine down the line. So what if we can whisper that in between different equipment and stop these redundant processes all the way down the line? So Hermes, we see, is going to help us do that, and that's why ASM is part of that consortium for the Hermes standard. We see the other standards, such as CFX, as where we can get data out of the machines and an upward level communication where you can get information out of the equipment to a next level higher up system. So I think they complement each other nicely, to be quite honest.
Okay, yeah. And within the ecosystem, where does OML sit, and where is that in terms of user and industry acceptance?
Yeah, so we announced OML last year and released it last year. So in this past year, we've been actively deploying it, working with partners to use our SDK to develop their own OML solutions. So currently we have OML running on hundreds of lines at different facilities, and it's gaining a lot of acceptance, and it's been pretty successful so far to enable our customers to use this to access the data from their equipment.
Okay, and Jason, you've been heavily involved with IPC and at SMTAi. There's been a lot of talk about CFX. First of all, do you agree with the way Mark sees things about the layered approach, if you like, of the standards? And where is CFX right now?
Actually, it doesn't make for good press, but I agree completely with the way Mark articulated it, because it is Hermes in the model is very much lower in the automation layer than where CFX resides, which is factory-wide, all the way up into the ERP, the host systems, MES, and so forth. So CFX is floating above that, and actually the committee has good communication with the Hermes people, and my hope is that there would actually be a CFX to Hermes bridge, because the information, there is a very practical purpose, of course, for what's being done at that level, and it is like next generation SMTAi, essentially. So no misalignment on that matter.
Okay, and in terms of where we are in the process, where I'm every time I do one of these, I'm hoping it's going to be the last one. I shouldn't do that, but there needs to be some progress in terms of timing. We've got a couple of milestones coming up, like Productronica in a couple of months. Then we've got Apex in the spring. And I know OEMs and EMS alike are looking for solutions that they can deploy as part of their own plans.
That's correct, and it's actually not only them. I think I can't speak for the machine vendors, but the machine vendors, the MES suppliers, we would all like to have this issue resolved. So there is a lot of timing pressure. But the good news is, we spent the first year or so of the CFX effort. It was difficult, more than I anticipated, to get agreement on the transport methodology of the data and the encoding. That was cleared after Apex through vote and so forth. And we entered into yesterday's meeting with a 50-plus page schema document, a working copy, that actually the framework of that Lego brick model we talked of in prior discussions about how it's a capability-based standard, not a machine-type standard, is built out. And the stage we're at now is where the lowest level of domain-specific data sets for a capability, say optical inspection, ID acquisition, and so forth, are now being parsed out to individual task groups, which are, say, placement vendors and so forth that are going to fill those sections of the data model in, and then we're at a point where it is fully usable as a standard. Well, I shouldn't say that. It would have to go to draft and vote, but it would be built out largely at that point. So it was rather exciting that now there's something very tangible and of significant scope finished in the structure of it.
Yeah, and if we look at those standards when they do come together, and this whole layers approach with layers of MES, layers of ERP, all those different approaches, are you working on applications that use Hermes, CFX, your own software, and kind of bring a solution that actually adds value to the user?
We certainly are, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. If you can use this big data that we're getting out of the equipment and do something useful with it, really what you want to do is improve someone's yield, improve their factory efficiency. That could be in designing an intelligent system that can predict processes and debug processes, improve processes, get you better yield. It could be supplying material to the line. So we're working at ASM on both of those topics, yield and material supply, and we hope using these standards we'll be able to get the data more easily. A word again to how it fits together, I expect to get a lot of very rich data out of the CFX standard. We're going to get some real detailed information that we can do stuff with. Hermes has its place as well, because not every single machine in the line is hundreds of thousands of dollars piece of equipment with a computer in it and all this rich data. It may be a simple piece of equipment that transports something down the line or does a very simple operation. So we need that layer at the shop floor level to better communicate on the simpler machines as well that don't have all that processing power. So Hermes will give us that opportunity, and CFX will give us this rich data that we can really do something useful with.
Okay. Yeah. From your point of view, Zach, I guess OML sits in that similar place to CFX, but you're a software company that has to provide solutions regardless of what the vendor decides to use. How does your system operate with the different standards, and how as well as having a standard, how agnostic can you be within that whole ecosystem?
Yeah, so as we Mentor Graphics has the idea of implementing whatever standards are out there, whatever our customers are using, we implement those. So with our OML and our IoT platform, we can kind of disconnect our solutions from this IoT machine communication question. So you can build really any solution on top of this OML and IoT, and of course our solutions are using this right now, so everything we have deployed out in the marketplace is using OML and IoT.
Yeah, and you'd be able to build those same platforms if Hermes or CFX was the standard that the particular customer was using?
Well, I think Hermes is very complementary to what we're doing with OML, and then with the CFX, of course, I think we would support that once it's finally released and getting some market share. We would, support that and the customers that use that.
And Jason, there's a kind of a developer's kit that is available for CFX that allows people to develop applications. What stage are people at with that? Are you seeing people show you applications that are actually providing some tangible benefit?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked that, because I only just now, let me back up a moment. We believe that adoption, actually you alluded to it, adoption is very important. If it doesn't proliferate quickly, it could be the greatest data model in the world. One of the things that compromised prior attempts was the expense or difficulty for the machine vendors, frankly, of implementing proprietary brokers, things like that in the past, and we know what went on with those. The belief was we had to solve that problem as well. So obviously Aegis is on the task group for content and transport. In the process of the content development, our engineers that were involved actually built an SDK for the purposes of testing what was being made. And as of yesterday, the IPC gave me the legal documentation. We're going to donate that code to the IPC, and then it will go up onto GitHub, where the entire industry can pull it down as open source. And if they, like for example, if ASM wanted to use the code, it basically implements the transport methodology and generates the data objects for them automatically. So we think that will allow the R&D departments of different companies to expedite their implementation of the data feed for CFX on their systems. So it is an SDK that'll make it much simpler.
Okay, so last question for everybody, and I'm putting myself in the position of a $10 billion plus EMS company with multiple sites worldwide. When am I going to be able to take receipt of a standard, both Hermes and the level above it, and utilize it in a project that I've got within my facilities?
Well, we'll be rolling out Hermes at Productronica. So equipment vendors are already working on implementing that in their machinery. So after Productronica, early next year, you should be able to see something on the Hermes standard. I'll leave the other gentlemen to talk about the other standards, but I think Hermes, you're going to see that early next year.
Okay.
So with the OML, of course, you can go out to the omlcommunity.com right now and download the standard, download the SDK. As I mentioned, the Minder Graphics of Valor software is using OML underneath, so you can use our IoT platform today. It's all available right now.
Hey, Jason?
The plan the committee came up with is that by Productronica we would actually have some technological platforms to demonstrate in a limited fashion, and then as we go into Apex there would actually be trial evidence, meaning in the field of the operation, and then the working, well, I guess at that point it would be the draft. We would be going to vote shortly after Apex. That's the hope, because we are so close now. If we can get the volunteers to build in that final layer, which we hope will happen quickly, we're getting very, very close.
Yeah, and the whole committee seems to be agreed on it, and the whole industry is agreed that we need it. I'm not going to do another standards roundtable, but I'm going to hold all three of you individually accountable for the timelines you're predicting. So come Apex, there'll be some individual interviews where I'll be saying, did this happen? And you'll be able to answer that. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. Always a pleasure to chat. Thank you.